Illinois faces some big challenges. Today, you're about to hear a truly honest analysis of the problems we face. Equally important, you'll also hear an in-depth discussion of some practical solutions. This is your radio source for stories, the insight, and the answers you won't hear anywhere else, not in the media, and not coming from Springfield. You're listening to Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project. Now, here's your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Welcome to another edition of Illinois Rising. Dan Proft, co-host of Chicago's Morning Answer, weekdays 5 to 9 a.m. and AM 560 with Amy Jacobson. And joining me is Brian Timpone, who is the founder of Local Labs, a content production outfit. And this week we had something very interesting. The purveyors of the culture of sexual harassment in Springfield investigated the purveyors of the culture of sexual abuse in CPS. It was pitch perfect for Illinois. Lawmakers holding a hearing, state lawmakers holding a hearing to hear from victims of sexual misconduct within the Chicago public school system after this explosive report called Betrayed by the Chicago Tribune, which detailed just over the last 7 years some 230 cases where the city's legal department found credible evidence of misconduct. And we've had, in the recent, not too recent past, some teachers have already been prosecuted and convicted of sexually abusing minors. It's incredible. We heard at the hearing, one of those who testified at the state legislative hearing was Morgan Aranda, who's now 22 years old. She was a freshman at Walter Payton High School, Payton Prep, when she was assaulted by her world studies teacher.
I'm here because of what CPS subjected me to in the months following. I'm here to shed light on the re-traumatizing, intimidating interrogations. I was pulled from class to sit alone in a room with an old man who asked not how I felt or what they could do to make me feel safe in my own school again, but what I was wearing when I had been assaulted. I felt like I was the one under investigation.
So that's an interesting case. It's not bad enough that she was assaulted by a teacher. She then was essentially treated as the responsible party by the CPS investigator. Another woman who testified was Tamara Reed. She said she was treated the same way by school officials when she reported being sexually assaulted by a substitute teacher at Robert Black Elementary School.
I am not the person I was before the assault. And I will never be the same as a result of what has been done to me.
The school officials asked Miss Reed what she was wearing at the time and whether she came on to him. She's a student. He's a teacher. So it's just really interesting, Brian, because everything I hear from every responsible person, every person in a position of responsibility, I should say, not responsible person, is how that everything they do in CPS and city government and public office is for the kids. Well, where's the Chicago Teachers Union Red Shirts rallying on Daly Plaza? Where is Common the Rapper weighing in on this? Where is the protest outside City Hall? It's been remarkable to me how little coverage this case has gotten. This expose, it's not one case, this scandal, this systemic culture of abuse in CPS, how much of a lack of intellectual curiosity there is about what exactly is going on in this system.
CPS is on the leading edge of any school scandal, but let's be really clear. This is not a solvable problem with the current structure we have of public schools with public employee unions that effectively run these schools for the adults. There is no solution. I hate to break it to parents of public school kids, but this will never be solved. And by the way, it happens everywhere. It happens in Hinsdale. It happens downstate. It obviously happens to a much greater degree in Chicago than we know. Because what happens here is these schools are built not just to pay the adults at the expense of the children learning, but to protect the adults from accountability. These are mechanisms of unaccountability.
Where are the trial lawyers, the great defenders of the little guy descending on CPS?
There is no accountability, Dan, ever possible, right? It just doesn't exist. And so you're never going to fix it.
For more on this topic, we're pleased to be joined by State Representative Joe Sosnowski, who's a Republican from the Rockford area. He's a member of the House Education Committee that took testimony from some of the victims in CPS this week. Joe, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having us.
So what was your takeaway from what you heard from those who testified before your committee?
Well, obviously, this whole, kudos to the Tribune. I mean, it's a horrible thing, but thank goodness that they were, on the leading edge of looking into this and looking at just what the bureaucratic mess is, the ineffective background checks, and the fact that this does need an independent investigation, outside of the State House legislature, obviously. My biggest concern, I think, as was mentioned in your prequel here, is that where are the unions on these types of matters? Obviously, they cover the vast majority of employees at the schools. And, they're really good at fleecing the taxpayers out of money so that they can lobby in Springfield and Washington. But when it comes down to solving problems and being involved in improving teacher performance and quality and safety of the students and providing the best possible education for students, where are they? It's just you hear a lot of silence, uninvolvement. It's not our job, things like that. And, they can be a pivotal driver in providing better environments by helping come alongside the leadership of schools to train, improve background checks, to do a better job at screening and training just overall on a day-to-day basis, month-to-month, and year-to-year. And they look at that as very little, if any, of their responsibility at all.
Hi, Joe. But don't you think that this is a way to effectively pull the teachers who do these things out of the justice system? And we've set up a system where they are protected by the unions. This stuff is routinely swept under the rug. Again, we've seen this hundreds of times around the state, at every type of school, not just CPS. Obviously, CPS is probably the best at covering things up. But these people should be prosecuted. They should go to jail. And the people who didn't report this should be prosecuted. What's stopping that from happening?
Yeah, you're right. A lot of this, not just CPS, these types of issues happen where, they'll, if something's investigated, it may be a slap on the wrist or because of union protection or ease of dealing with the issue. Administrators will just say, well, we'll let you resign from your position and leave the district, and there's no, reports given. But absolutely, any of these types of complaints need to be sent to the next level. They need to be investigated, and charges need to be charged against these individuals, perpetrating crime. And yes, we need to do the best job we can to prevent it from happening with background checks and not allowing people with criminal histories to be in the classroom with students. But when things do happen, we need to be aggressive to make sure that we send the message very loud and publicly that this is not allowed to happen. And Representative McSweeney has introduced some legislation with bipartisan support that I think has some good steps in the right direction of bringing along the state board where these types of complaints have to be administered and registered and then reviewed and investigated automatically. There is no choice to, just kind of let somebody go or leave the investigation at the local level. We need to put this in the hands of an independent investigatory body that can look at these things and evaluate them and take them out of the local school district's purview.
Well, of course, there were instances where there was a legal duty to report by school administrators to DCFS, to local police, and that didn't happen in this case, in some of these cases either. So you still have this sort of systemic, cultural, and in some cases personnel problem that needs to be addressed. So back to the point of holding people accountable. And I know obviously the Chicago public school system is Chicago run, but it's majority funded by the state. And so what can state government do to send a message to CPS other than one more layer of oversight with the State Board of Education? What else can the state government do to send a message to CPS and the adults in charge of that system ostensibly that they better completely rethink how they're approaching safety in the schools as it pertains to this predatory conduct?
Well, right, and a lot of what we do is with budgets, and so I would be an advocate of seriously looking at withholding serious amounts of funding until they get their academic year. And a simple thing that each school can do independently, but at the direction and us at the state legislature forcing them to do this, and it's outlined in McSweeney's bill also, is there has to be a process. It has to be open and visible. It has to be available for teachers, students, and parents to be able to file complaints and not just have them swept underneath the rug. And until they can put in that type of system where parents and kids know freely that they can go to an area to file a complaint and it will be heard and it will be investigated, it's no different than what we've had happening down in Springfield, where there was a place you could go, but nobody would hear the complaint, didn't have an investigator in there for years, and even if there was, it was appointed by management. Well, you can't have that type of, you have to have an independent system that people feel comfortable going to, and they'll actually have a hearing and a fair shake. And then if criminal charges need to be filed, those need to be reported instantaneously, and we can't be relying on individual school administrators necessarily to make that decision. That's where the independent nature of the investigation needs to happen.
He is State Representative Joe Sosnowski, who's a Republican from Rockford. Joe, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks so much for having me.